Hello, 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 everyone. Mike Arnold here, co-founder of Path Trading Partners, along with Bob Iacchino, with your weekly stock sector overview. By the way, if you are new here, please do consider subscribing, ringing that bell, and hitting the like button. Longer-term subscribers, please leave some comments and like the videos. All right. All right. Gonna go over getting tons of questions with the broad markets. Remember, we've had the S&P, NASDAQ, Russell, and Dow all tipped to medium to longer term buys. And people want to know with this little pullback, are we back to sell mode? No, not at all. You see here S&P up on the screen right now. It's not only a close below this purple line. We have to. There's other rules. That's why I just post this, and I will be releasing that system soon. But this has a fair amount of ways to go before it tips back into sell mode. Now, does that mean you can't sell things that are overbought? No, I think we're still in a long-term bear market, and we're getting more of a short to medium-term buy with or consolidation. So we'll look at that. But the S&P not in sell mode. NASDAQ, even though some people have tried to recreate this and said, oh, it's in sell mode. Nope, not in sell mode. Sorry. Dow, not in sell mode. Russell, not in sell mode. And that brings up a good point. People think they why I follow stuff has helped me be objective. Could these flip to sell mode? Yes. Will they flip to sell mode? Probably. Unless we're, theoretically, could you go higher? Yeah, there's key levels that we watch for, especially on the daily and weekly overviews that, could then tip it for probability wise to retest the high areas. But those have not happened yet. You got to trade what is, not what you think is going to happen, not what you think should happen. Now, from a fundamental perspective, do I believe we are at the bottom? No, not at all. And we still see crazy things like the meme stock uh, chasing back. We still see a lot of stuff that aren't signs of a long-term bottom. And from valuations, yeah, valuations have pulled back, but they aren't cheap. They aren't even, they pulled back to maybe almost sane levels, but they're not cheap. And now that with this rally, they've gone out of sane levels, and we have yet to get into the potential recession and earnings compression. And if you look at even forward earnings and you do like a 15 times multiple, which is, that's a fair valuation unless you're in super growth mode, that would take the potential S&P back to 3,000. So just keep those things in mind moving forward. So short term, we can look for some bullish things, especially if this pullback continues. But I'm going to be picky overall with what things I want to look at. All right, let's take a look. XLE still in bull mode. Not much to talk about there. Still in bull mode. Retrace the 50% level, pausing there. On a continued rally, next level is 82.87, but this is still in long-term bull mode. It has to get back down a fair. Does this mean I'm going to chase things? No. Like Oxy, based off Buffett's buying and everything else, I think is short-term overvalued. There's some very short-term plays, but I'm not chasing that for a longer-term play now. There's other better energy stocks to watch for, especially on pullbacks. Remember, crude is still in a long-term sell, but we have a short-term, I should say, rally on, and we do have signals for a potential short-term bounce. If those triggers, then you can be a little more aggressive in the short term. But other than that, no. Another thing I've been asked is why don't I always go over to rotation zones with the sectors, like the weekly rotation zones? Do we not use them? Yes, I completely use them. And it's roughly going back and forth in neutral mode to buy mode in here. Just shifted back to buy mode. Why do I not go over that every week in this? Because we'd have a like hour and a half video, and we're trying to keep this free for YouTube. By the way, for people who have asked, this bigger thing is not a potential double top. This little thing is not a potential double top. It's gone too far. Now, if it does break below about 75 again, continue to watch for the pullback. Other than that, and that's not a major pullback because it's in buy mode, and it's going to take, even if it closes back below 70.29, it's going to take a substantial even move below that to get it back to sell mode because the bottom indicator has to tip over. Also, real estate went to buy mode, XLRE. No, this is not back to sell mode. We're getting the pullback. Now, if we get a weekly close back below last week's low, it could. It could be enough to tip it to sell mode. But, we have to be keeping an eye on that. There is no long-term pullback here. This is a daily. You can watch for the pullback to the rotation zone and key breakout area becoming. Now, I am cautious on this because we're coming off a divergence, but we got daily cycles getting to the low, weekly cycles still at the top. So we've got mismatched cycles, so this is nothing to be aggressive with at this point. Going to watch, even with another bounce, we might be putting in a more medium-term topping pattern, especially coming off the area of the daily 200. So I am being very cautious still in real estate, but if there are good plays, both fundamentally and technically, they can still be investigated at that point. But if stuff's overvalued or at considerable, overvalued from a fundamental or from a technical point of view, meaning the thing I use is the RSI in overbought mode, I'm steering clear of it. XLF, still in buy mode. Even with this reaction, still in buy mode. You can see that can easily pull back. Your key support coming in about 34.30 to about 34.40. If we do start getting a close below 34.30, I will start looking more aggressively for some shorts, especially with this gap fill and with weekly cycles at the top. So this is the one one of the ones I'm most cautious of, that there could have been the little fake out move here. All right, remember we have Jackson Hole coming up with Powell speaking on Friday. If he comes out with a dovish tone at all, we should see the rally continue. If it's interpreted as dovish, he comes out with a more hawkish tone, then we could continue to see the pullback in financials. I'm going to be watching weekly cycles at the top, daily cycles getting the bottom, so we might see another bounce and then put in a daily topping pattern. So I am very cautious still in financials. XLK, technology, little top here after a multi-week run. Would really need a substantial sell-off, but your first warning would be a close below last week's low, and that would be on a weekly basis. Right now, I'm just watching for the continued pullback. 146.80 to 147 is the area of first support. We start getting back below about 145.44. I'll start watching for the even bigger pullback back to potentially 143 to 141. So I am being cautious with this slightly topping pattern against the 200 on the daily. This can actually be traded as a double, and we're going against the trend, and it's already hit virtually the first stop, so that would just take it back to this breakout area. So do keep that in mind. I would not be chasing technology at this point. XLI, still long-term buy. Key area, this is something that can also be watched for a pullback. I'm watching for more of a move. If we start breaking below about 98.50, watching for a move back to about 97.30 to 96.50 for support, and then I will be more active looking for setups in XLI. XLY, we got consumer discretionary, still in buy mode. No close above the 62.5. Was watching for that on the weekly basis, and no close above that. So this is more shifting to neutral mode. However, on a pullback now to 165 to about 164, we'll start looking if there's any decent plays. We get a close below 164, it's hands off for me, and watch for the bigger pullback in consumer discretionary. I'm still very cautious in that sector, and this could be another one that does have a whipsaw move. XLP, consumer staples, long-term buy with the medium to long-term system here, and double top, which triggered last week and continues to march up towards the stop reduction zone, getting a little overdone. You see with cycles on the top on the daily. First level support is about 76.50. We pull back, we drop below that, watching for a pullback to closer to 75.42. We get that pullback, I will be looking much more aggressively for consumer staple plays. Why am I a little cautious? We are in that medium to long-term buy. We have multiple buy signals, but we have daily and weekly cycles at the top and daily rolling over. So I needed to come back to some good support level and some of these overbought plays in consumer staples to get out of overbought mode. So do keep that in mind. We'll be watching. Now, if this keeps basing sideways and essentially holds the 76.50 support, remember, there's two kinds of corrections. A pullback and a retracement. So, I mean, a horizontal sideways correction or a pullback. If we start dropping below 76.50 level, I'll watch for a pullback in the rotation zone. Right now, it's basing sideways. So, if we do break out above last week's highs, then I'll have to be a little more aggressive in consumer staples. XLV Healthcare, still been in buy mode since the beginning of July. Still basing sideways, still in buy mode. Healthcare, we've had some pullbacks sitting at that rotation zone. If we get a close actually above Thursday's high on Monday, it could be an aggressive buy, more of a conservative buy signal with a rotation back up. I can't say aggressive because it is with the rotation zone. This double is still in play. So that's the only thing that shifts me to more conservative. But even on pullbacks, as long as this double does not trigger, it's looking for healthcare setups, especially if the market continues to roll over. XLB, Material Select, Spider still in long-term sell, never tipped to buy mode and reacting and turning back down. So Material Select especially will get more aggressive if we start closing below about 78. Why 78? Because it closes below the rotation zone and the 50 EMA and this prior support ledge and a harmonic. So you get below that, start watching for short plays in Material Select. We got cycles at the bottom, so we could see another pullback and then a reaction, then the final push, next push lower on materials. So do keep an eye out for that. And, you know, the bottom of the weekly rotation zone is right at that key level also. So that's the level I'm watching for, a breakdown with cycles at the top. But we could see a pullback, a secondary reaction, and then the bigger push lower. Why could we see that secondary reaction? Daily cycles getting to the bottom. And remember, when cycles daily and weekly are both at the top, that's when you tend to get the bigger moves down. When they're both at the bottom, that's when you tend to get the bigger moves up. When they're mismatched, you can have these secondary reactions before the bigger rollover plays. That's a good thing to keep in mind. Something I've been trying to instruct more to people so they can learn how to gauge the secondary versus primary reactions. Also, you see coming up here, filling that old weekly gap. Pay attention to gaps, especially on a weekly basis. Communications, still long-term sell. This is why, you know, communications, when you get the rollover plays, we still got the breakdown again. This is not looking good. I might be watching for a secondary bounce with daily cycles getting to the bottom, but that's just set up for more sells in communications. Not much to talk about there. Until this shifts. Now, it's trying to put in a longer-term bottom with the moving averages and the signal points coming back down. So if this puts in a longer-term bottom over the next couple months, we could see a shift. But it's premature to talk about that at this point. XLU, still in strong buy mode, getting very overdone. Weekly basis cycles at the top. We could be getting a divergence play here. Does that mean go sell? No. This is watch for pullbacks. Watch for pullbacks, especially with weekly cycles at the top, daily cycles rolling over. So far, sideways correction. area I'm watching is about 77 for support. We break below that, I'm watching for a bigger pullback in the rotation zone, and that could set up for some more plays, especially once weekly cycles get to the top. So XLU, bullish but cautious. Would not chase anything here. This is the time you raise stops on your utilities and be patient looking for entries. Once we get cycles at the bottom and a little pullback, that's the time to really get more aggressive back in XLU again. XRT, retail, still long-term sell after this corrective rally. Coming back down, watching for some support. Cycles getting the bottom about the 68, then a secondary bounce, then a bigger rollover play. Why a bigger rollover play? Because weekly cycle's still at the top. We're still in weekly sell mode. This is where I'm just showing you the weekly rotation zones a little more. Daily cycle, so we can see that pullback, little bounce, and then I'll be really starting to look more aggressively for retail shorts. But not quite yet. IYT, transportation, shifted to buy mode. Needs a pretty big pullback to get a whipsaw into sell mode. Watching for that pullback. First key support is about 241.50 and then 238.40 with this little left behind gap. You have this gap right here. And then I will start looking, as long as it stays in long-term, medium to long-term buy mode, getting the reaction off the 200. And especially if it pulls back to the bottom of the rotation zone, we'll start looking for more transportation plays if it stays in bullish mode. Why am I being a little cautious now? Again, weekly cycles at the top, daily cycles not yet in the bottom. We could get the pullback, secondary reaction, then we have to see if this long-term stays in buy mode. So it's pretty much just raise stops and hands off in transportation. DBC still in long-term buy mode. Never flip to sell mode. In consolidation, we'll start getting more aggressive. You start getting a daily close above about 26.40. And then once we fill this gap, 26.60, we'll get much more aggressive because we'll have a breakout of this horizontal channel. If it sells off, don't want to really see a daily close back below about 25.50 because then I'll watch for a pullback back to the 200, but that still is key support. So commodities are still a buy. Agriculture, flipped to buy, not flipped to sell mode. So, but I am cautious with this pullback. It could not get some follow through. We start breaking below about 1970. It's short-term hands off. Agriculture's daily cycles at the bottom, weekly cycles at the top. That's why I'm being very cautious. And we are into the weekly rotation zone. So in commodity plays, agricultures are not the one, even though it shifted to more medium to long-term buy with the weight based off this last week's follow through and no flip back up. I am in cautious mode with that segment of commodities. SMH, which is also a little interesting point because this did not technically shift last week to buy mode, but this is an exponential average right here. And since it is weighted with most recent price action, now it looks like it did shift, but it didn't. It's one of the things you have to be cautious about, especially in back testing stuff like this, because if I erase this bar, it was still right above there. So I'm watching for the continued pullback, still in long-term sell after the correction, and we do have a potential double top. So I will get aggressive with shorts below this let me give you the exact level. This 226.73. We'll start aggressively looking for semiconductor shorts again. Until that's there, I'm cautious. I need the bigger pullback. Why do I need the bigger pullback? Because we are still roughly holding the daily rotation zone. But we start getting back below the 50, this 231 area, then it could be even a front run before that double top is solidified. GDX, gold miners, coming up with the bear flag, rolling back down. Now there is a potential double here, so we'll watch for that next week. But unless you get a close back above about 27.58, nothing to do here. Absolutely nothing to do. VTV value, flip to buy mode. We got the double buy mode back at the end of July. We've got the long term or medium term to long term buy mode, and we completed the double buy. I am now a little cautious in the short term with value, but in the long term, still bullish. So far, sideways correction. We get a close below 140, 180. Going to watch for the bigger pullback and the gap fill towards the bottom of the rotation zone before I get bullish on that about 140, which I love, especially with daily cycles not yet at the bottom. Weekly cycle still at the top. I'd love to get this pullback before I get more aggressive with value. So it's raising stops at this point, especially after completing the targets on that weekly double bottom. Cautious. Even a break to the upside is still cautious because we have all this resistance. Now, longer term, we did close above the 62.5, so we should see returns to this about 149 area over the next possibly couple months. Do keep that in mind. Growth. Still, this is another one that could be a fake out flip, but watching for that pullback to about 255. Then we could get a secondary reaction. Why? Daily cycles will be at the bottom, and then we could get that turn up move, and weekly cycles are still at the top. So I'm going to watch for that secondary reaction to really judge growth, but right now not touching growth at all, at least until we get to the bottom of the daily rotation zone. This did close above the 62.5 on the daily, but not on the weekly. So that's a little mixed. So I am still cautious on growth at this point unless I find something that's a really strong setup. But I'd like to wait until the daily cycles get to the bottom. That's where we sit with everything. Again, thank you for tuning in. I hope this does help you and takes you not just through the sectors, but a mindset of how we evaluate the markets and the daily and weekly sectors. And again, I'd watch for things that are in bullish mode, but also get to the bottoms on the daily cycles. With that, I will talk to everyone later. Have a fantastic trading weekend. I hope you can tune into some of our live streams. And if you can't tune into the live streams, at least consider watching the replays because all the information is still relevant. Thank you again. Bye for now.